Hi, everybody. How's it going?
Good, thank you.
Oh, good. Well, I'm excited to see you all. I see some familiar faces. Dalila, I haven't seen you in a while. I've missed you. And some of you I know have just recently enrolled, so that's great. So tonight we'll cover a little bit of every competency, every domain. I mean, not every competency, every domain. So a little bit of pedagogy, a little bit of writing, reading, speaking, listening, and a lesson plan. So we're going to pack in a lot of content. And if you stay till the end, I will have a free lesson plan that I will share with you. If you've been with me before, you might already have the lesson plan, but still it'll be good to see it again. So to make sure it's a good experience for everybody, if you guys could mute your mics, that would be great. Um, that way we don't hear any background noise. I will be asking questions throughout. So if you could put your answer in the chat box, that'd be great. And then also at the end, I'll make sure I save time for your questions where we can unmute our mic and chat. So my name is Courtney, and I know a lot of you know me. I recognize many of you, and you have worked with me. Some of you guys have done a lot with me. And I want to tell you a little bit about myself and how I can help you pass the LOTE before we get started. So I passed the LOTE several years ago. And when I passed it, there was really no good study material out there. Now there's lots of stuff and some of it's really good, right? But when I took it, there was really nothing out there. Um, so what I did, my Spanish was already good because I have a master's degree in Spanish. So my Spanish was fine. But what I did was I did my own research on the pedagogy, instruction, and assessment. Lots of looking up
What did she
resources
say?
and and compiling it. And then that's how I passed. Lots of research on my own. I never meant to do this for a living, right? It just kind of happened after I passed my test. I was like, wow, I could help a lot of other people pass. So I want to show you that when I took the LOTE, what my score was. So you can see I've taken a ton of these tests. I've taken 15 now and passed them all on my first try. But the LOTE I'm particularly proud of because I did really well on that. I had a 281, right? So I did really well on pedagogy, cultural understanding, listening, reading, perfect on writing, and almost perfect on speaking. I know what I did wrong on speaking. I accidentally said a word in English, which you do not do, but that's what I did. And then a 6 on my lesson plan, and I lost 1 point on my essay in English. So funny, I did better on my writing in Spanish than I did on my writing in English, right? So that's kind of funny. But yeah, so I've passed 15 of these tests, you can see, right? And I've been tutoring people for many years with great success. So that's a little bit about me and why you should even be here tonight. I promise you're not wasting your time, that I'll pack in a lot of value. But before we start on the content, I want to know if you guys are excited about becoming teachers. I assume you are. And if you are, tell me why. I know I was excited because I wanted a job that would work for my family, and I wanted to help students. That was important to me. Let's see. Love to teach another language. Yes.
Miss Courtney, I think it's just I've been teaching it for a few years and it's just a fun subject to teach and to share my culture. And it's just we just have a lot of fun with it.
That's awesome. I love your enthusiasm. Yes. Yes. And I see somebody else saying, love your culture and telling, yes, that's great. I'm excited to be a teacher, especially working with students. Yeah. Well, those are great reasons. Sharing your culture, sharing your language, right? I've always been fascinated by all the different cultures that speak Spanish, right? And all of the different food, everything. So, so I remember being very excited, but I also remember being very nervous about these tests. Who's nervous about this test?
Morning. I want to share
Me.
something.
Yes.
Sure.
I was so excited, last year when I do my first year in Spanish teacher, and when in the end of the year, with almost all my student success and passing, the national Spanish test, I was so excited, and one of the principal and the curriculum lady, they was so stressed about when they doing the test. It was 45 minutes test, and all my students ended in 10 minutes and pass it. And they was so nervous, but I say, no, I feel confidence on them because we work hard, to pass. And so I cannot wait to start it next week. And I'm glad that I'm gonna teach it again in the same school. But I'm so excited.
That's awesome. That is so good. Well, thank you. So I remember being super nervous about this test, right? And for good reason, because if we look at the data from the state, I don't know if you can see this because it's kind of small. Let me see if I can make it bigger. This is the chart from that TEA puts out. You can see that the link there is from TEA. You can Google this and find it on just if you Google EPP passing rates, but let me go to the link because I think I can make it bigger if I do this. So if we look here, you can see the passing rate for the LOTE. So see, this shows the passing rate, program year, began testing. This is pass rate. For LOTE Spanish is 40%. So 60% of people fail, right? And we're talking about a lot of people that speak Spanish as their first language struggle with this test. It's not all language learners that fail this test. It's a lot of native speakers, a lot of heritage speakers, and of course, a lot of language learners too that fail this test, right? So it's nerve-wracking, and I don't say that to scare you at all, but just to let you know, you've got to do your homework, right? Because I hear from a lot of people that take this test and they say, well, I didn't study because Spanish is my first language. I don't need to study for a Spanish test. But it's not just a Spanish test. Over a third of it is on pedagogy, instruction, and assessment, right? So that's why everybody has to study. No matter how good your Spanish is, you still have to study for this test.
I was
So
told by the state of Texas that this is the most failed test that there is.
the only one that I've ever seen that has a lower, we can look at the percentages right here. There are a couple that have lower, but very few. Like for whatever reason, physical science is only 31% passing rate, but it is definitely one of the lowest. I do plan to send the recording, but it might be tomorrow because the recording takes a long time to convert.
Thank you.
But you're welcome. But I do plan to send it. Yes, and a lot of people fail this test, so you're not alone. Really, if you haven't passed, it's not your fault. You just need to think that you didn't have the right resources or the right knowledge, right? So with the right resources and the right knowledge and the right level of Spanish, I'm not going to kid you and say you can just be intermediate at Spanish and pass this test. That's not the case. But almost everybody that contacts me already speaks Spanish well and writes it pretty well. They don't write it as well as they speak it, but they know Spanish well. We just have to tweak a few things. That's what we have to do. If your English isn't that strong, that's also a problem. You have to have a high level of English and Spanish. And I'll be very honest with you, if you do my course in tutoring and you're turning in assignments, I'll tell you if you're not ready for either English or Spanish, that you need to be working on that and maybe recommend some resources, right? If I know of a good one for that. So that's a little bit about the failure rate. And again, not to scare you, but just so you do your homework, right? Let's see. Let me go on the back button here. And I'll be using little bits and pieces from my course tonight. Not everything, of course, but a little bits and pieces. So what's on the test? Well, you can see this on the Texas NESINC manual, but I also posted in my course for your convenience, right? So you can see over a third of the test is on instruction and assessment, what everybody likes to call pedagogy, right? That's those 45 multiple choice questions, the lesson plan, and the essay in English. So over a third of the test is in English. That's why you have to know English well to pass this test. 8% is cultural understanding. Most people do really well on that. 16.7% is listening, and 16.7% reading. Most people get 18 out of 25 on that. I bet if you look at your score report, you got about 18 or 19 if you took the test before. And that's almost enough. You want to try for 20 because 20 is 80%. We want to be trying for 80% on everything. And then written expression is 12%, oral expression is 12%. I'll answer questions at little parts where it's good for me to not lose my train of thought so I can keep things going. You have to wait 30 days to retest if you fail the test. Somebody was asking about that. We already talked about the passing rate or the failure rate, 60%, right? So I'd like to show you some testimonials. These are from a few months ago. I have some more recent ones too. I just wasn't able to put them all together in a fancier way, but let me show you one of my more recent ones. This is Diana Martinez, and she gave me permission to post her score, and she did very well, 253. A lot of people passed with the 240s, but you can see she passed with the 253, so that was great. So that was really excited because I've been hearing from a lot of people this summer that passed their test. And then Andrea passed, a few months ago, and she's teaching and traveling a lot too. She's really living her best life, traveling and now teaching. So for pedagogy, instruction, and assessment, there's 3 competencies. Competency 1 is on the theories and the experts you have to know. Competency 2 is more on assessments. And competency 3 is on the 5 C's, right? So they're all important, right? But let me give you a quick preview. We're going to do competency 3 because I consistently hear from people, I want 5 C's, 5 C's, 5 C's. That's what everybody wants. So that's what we're going to do. But I want to show you that my course has a lot of unique content that you're not going to get anywhere else. So you might have a guide already by another company, but if it doesn't have this stuff right here, it's probably not going to help you. So Lev Vygotsky, Michael Lewis, Noam Chomsky, Del Himes, Stephen Krashen. So if you have a study guide that has pedagogy and it doesn't have these names on it, it's not going to help you pass, right? You also have to know all of these theories. But I want to do the 5 C's because that's what people really want to know about, right? So what we'll do for the 5 C's, because I think this is the most effective way to do it, is we'll go straight to the source. And I'll show you what you're going to see on the test for the 5 C's, because luckily for the 5 C's, you don't have to memorize them. You just have to know how to apply them. So that's why I like the 5 C's, because it's not like the ACTFL guidelines, which I teach you about in my course in tutoring, where you have to memorize them. These you just have to know how to apply them. So if we go to the Texas NESI manual, this free website where you go to register for your test and click on prepare, you can get the free preparation manual. And then if we go to number 8, it has the content knowledge questions, the pedagogy questions, which are a great way to see if you're ready, right? If you haven't studied yet, I can tell you you're probably not ready unless you studied this in college or something. But here's the chart for the 5 C's, right? So in my course, I do go over the content, but I like to show you what you're going to see on the real test. So I always go over this in tutoring, and then in my course, I supplement, right? That way you're getting some new information too. But in tutoring, I like to focus on this, and then we'll do some sample questions and see if you guys learned, and then we'll move on to the next section. So communication has 3 standards. 1.1 is interpersonal communication. This is the only form of communication that's 2-way. That means 2 people are talking back and forth. They're having a conversation, exchanging opinions, information, stuff like that. 1.2 is interpretive communication. This means you're understanding what you read or what you hear. So you're reading something and understanding, or hearing something and understanding it. It's called interpretive communication. 1.3 is presentational communication, where you give a presentation or a demonstration. So you want to be using all 3 types of communication, right? Does anybody here from my course or course in tutoring to remember what it's called whenever you assess all 3 types? I bet Anita knows it.
IPA.
I'm coming.
That's
from it.
right. That's
Sorry, I
right.
didn't get my microphone on.
That's okay. I just knew that Anita was going to know it because Anita's really studied the pedagogy, but it looks like some of you guys have also been studying. So that's great. It's an IPA when you assess all 3 types of communication. Next, we have the culture standards. There's 2 of these. 2.1 is students demonstrate an understanding of the relationship between the practices and perspectives of the culture studied. So practices are things people do. Perspectives are what they believe. So in my course in tutoring, we go over a few examples of these, but the main one that I can think of for you guys to know is, so most of Latin America and Spain is Catholic, right? That's their perspective, their belief. The practice would be going to mass or saying special prayers, right? So their belief is related to what they do. Their perspective is related to their practice, right? Now let's look at 2.2. Students demonstrate an understanding of the relationship between the products and perspectives of the culture study. So if we go back to the Catholic example, that's their perspective, right? The product they buy might be a crucifix or maybe a candle with the picture of a saint on it, right? And you can think of non-religious examples too, as long as it's what they believe and what they do, right? Like the idea that Sunday is a day of rest, right? In many cultures, and that might be religious, it might not be, it might just be a family tradition. It affects the fact that a lot of people don't work on Sundays and the businesses are not open, right? In some of the Spanish-speaking countries. So that would be a non-religious example. So that's cultures. Most people find cultures challenging because it doesn't sound like what we think of as cultures, about food, tradition, religion, and stuff like that. It could tie into those elements, but it's all about what people do and what they believe, practices and perspectives, and then products and perspectives.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yeah.
So if they do give an example like, is, talking about this country has, they don't have a lot of stores open on Sundays. Would that be standard 2.1 or standard 2.2?
That would be 2.1 because that's a practice thing they do. But
because there's no product involved. It's just the
no product. No,
okay.
I don't have any keywords. You just have to really analyze it. I don't think there's any magic keywords for these. It's just really understanding it and practicing it. Lots of practice. So in my course, you like whichever option you get, I'm going to show you 3 different options I have to help you pass the LOTE. But all 3 of them have 2 full-length pedagogy tests involved, right? 2. So 90 practice questions. But 2 of my options have even more practice tests. I have tons of practice tests. And that's not really a way to study, right? We're not going to study by taking practice questions. We got to study the content first, like we're doing now, and then do the questions to check our understanding. But a lot of people really like questions, and it helps reinforce what they've learned. So that's why I have so many pedagogy tests to really help you. So that's cultures. And then we have connections. 3.1, students reinforce and further their knowledge of other disciplines through the foreign language. Anytime you see the word discipline on this test or any Texas exam, they're talking about other subjects. So they study another subject in Spanish. Maybe they study physics or math or social studies or something in Spanish, right? And then 3.2, students acquire information and recognize the distinctive viewpoints that are only available through the foreign language and its cultures. So a distinctive viewpoint that's only available through the foreign language and its cultures might be a historical viewpoint. If you think about how history is written, right, it's unique to the different country that is writing it. So if you were to read a textbook written in the United States about the Mexican-American War, it's going to have a different perspective than a book written in Mexico about the same war. Same events, same people, but a different viewpoint, right? So if we want to get their distinctive viewpoint, we could read their historical documents. There's other distinctive viewpoints that I talk about in my course in tutoring to make that clear, but that's a good example. And you can think of more too on your own that are only available through the foreign language and its cultures. And then we have comparisons. This one's pretty straightforward. Students demonstrate understanding of the nature of language through comparisons of the language studied and their own. So they compare L1 and L2. L1 is language 1, L2 is language 2. They're comparing English and Spanish, right? Maybe they're looking at cognates, words that look alike that have the same meaning. syntax, that sentence order, things like that. So that's 4.1, comparing L1 and L2. 4.2 is comparing cultures. So this is more of what we think of when we think of cultures, right? They might be comparing holidays like El Dia de los Muertos and Halloween. They might be comparing food. They might be comparing traditions, customs, things like that. So that's comparison. So those are pretty straightforward. And then communities is also pretty straightforward. 5.1, students use the language both within and beyond the school setting. They use it at school and outside of school. And then 5.2, students show evidence of becoming lifelong learners by using the language for personal enjoyment and enrichment. So that's the 5 C's. Now let's look at a couple of questions on the 5 C's so we can see what we learned tonight. So here's a quiz just for the 5 C's with a few questions. And feel free to put your answer in the chat box. What I'll do is I'll flip back and forth. Oh, I think we have a question. Let's see. Standard 3 includes the 5 C's. Well, standard, they're all part of the 5 C's. All of these that we saw are 5 C's. So cultures, connections, comparisons, communities, communication, they're all 5 C's. So I'll flip back and forth so you can see these. I changed it because that's not my chart. So 3.1 is 3.A, 3.B is 3.2, and so on. A Spanish 4 student is studying economics, and he decides to also read about supply and demand and scarcity of resources in Spanish. The Spanish teacher asks him to present what he has learned about to the class in Spanish. Which of the standards does this address? Select all that apply. So we know there's going to be at least 2 right if it says select all that apply. So he's studying another subject in Spanish, right? He's presenting, and we know he's reading too. So keep all of that in mind, right? He's reading, he's studying another subject, and he's presenting. So look at these options here. And then I'll go back to the chart. Some of you guys have my course in tutoring already, so you know this. I'm going to give everybody else a couple more minutes to really think about, well, maybe not a couple, because you only get 1 minute per question on the test, right? So we'll try to stick to that. But you can go back to the chart and look at this, right? So let's see what people are saying, because we've got a few answers. C, B, and D. So C is 5.2. Yes, 5.2 is they're using it for fun. B is 3.A. That's the connections one, where they're studying another subject. That's right. And then I think y'all said D, presentational communication. Good. So 3.2 would be a distinctive viewpoint. Well, this is not distinctive, right? It's not unique. So that's not it. And then 4.A is comparing the language, and he's not doing that. So y'all got that one right. Let's do one more, and then we'll move on to the next thing. That way I don't keep you guys too late tonight. Which of the following best represents how students could meet the culture standard? Now remember, cultures is not food, fun, and traditions. It's products and perspectives, practices and perspectives. So I'll give you a second to see which one you think that is. Got lots of answers. Good. Most of y'all are picking C, which is right. Selecting a common household item in a Spanish-speaking country and explain how that is related to their beliefs. That would be products and perspectives, right? So the rest of them sound like culture, but they're not actually culture according to the 5 C's chart, right? So that's good. So now this is another testimonial. Ricardo passed several months ago. Super excited. He's now teaching at Fort Bend ISD. And let's give y'all a little quiz. Do you know what the average salary is now for teachers in Texas? Just to break things up a little bit. Depends on which website you look at, right? Yeah, it's right around 60,000. Yeah. And some districts are giving stipends and makes it even higher, right? So they're finally paying teachers at least closer to what they're worth, right? And then you can see in my course, you get quizzes at the end of each competency, right? With about 15 questions for each one. That adds up to a full-length test, and then a full-length pedagogy test right here too. Now let's talk about a lesson plan. Okay. So let me pull up my drive with my lesson plans. Let me see if this is the one I want. That's not the right one. Unfortunately, only the first part of the title shows up right here. Here we go. So if you get an advanced lesson plan, that's the hardest one. And it seems like that's what most people are getting nowadays. That's what everybody's emailing me about, at least. And we're not supposed to talk about specifics. So we'll be careful tonight to respect that affidavit that everybody signs, where you don't disclose any test questions in part or whole. But I think it's fine to mention generalities. Like, I'm not going to say what the objective was, but you might get one that has to be about a poem or about a play, right? So you want to know about a poem and a play in the target language. It also could happen that you get a short story or something like that. So you want to know a little bit of literature, right? So tonight we'll look at a poem in Spanish. Let me see if I can find the one that I want. Usually I have it hyperlinked in the lesson plan, but for some reason it's not. Okay, so si supiera que esta fuese la última vez que te veo salir por esa puerta, te daría un abrazo, un beso, te llamaría de nuevo para darte más. Si supiera que esta fuera la última vez que voy a oír tu voz, grabaría cada una de tus palabras para poder oírlas una y otra vez indefinidamente. Si supiera que estos son los últimos minutos que te veo, diría te quiero y no asumiría tontamente que ya lo sabes. Siempre hay un mañana y la vida nos da otra oportunidad para hacer las cosas bien. Pero por si me equivoco y hoy es todo lo que nos queda, me gustaría decirte cuánto te quiero, que nunca te olvidaré. So that's the poem. That's by one of the most famous authors in the Spanish-speaking world, right? Latin American author. So the grade, they give you the grade, they give you the profile, the proficiency level, the theme topic, the objective, the length of unit. You have to fill out the vocabulary. You have to fill out the procedures and the assessment, right? So you have to do vocabulary, materials, procedures, assessment. Everything else is given. So this would be given to you 5th year high school, 16 to 18 years of age, advanced ranged in the ACTFL guidelines, right? So they're at the advanced level. A poem from the target culture. And then the objective. This is the part you really need to focus on. Everybody seems to focus on the poem, but you really need to focus on is the objective. Otherwise, you might get a 0. Right? Students will discuss in the target language their readings of the poem and have a discussion with the partner. So if you had them write a poem with a new ending, that might sound like a great lesson plan, but if you're not doing what the objective says, you'll get a 0, right? Length of unit, 3 class periods of 50 minutes each. So now we need vocabulary words related to this poem or to teaching about a poem. But because they're advanced, we don't want to pick easy words. Like we wouldn't pick amor or puerta or abrazo. They already know those words, right? So we need to pick words that are appropriate for advanced. Supiera, grabaría, estrofa, asumiría indefinidamente. Now that one might seem obvious, oh, that's a cognate, but it's hard to pronounce if you think about it, for language learners at least, right? Me equivoco, olvidaré. Okay. And then I put the words. The lesson plan needs to be written in English. So I think it's important that you write them in both English and Spanish because we want to show that we know our vocabulary words in Spanish, right? Including where the accent marks go. And that's another thing I teach you in my course in tutoring is where accent marks go, because you will lose points on writing, If you don't use your accent marks, you're probably going to get 12 out of 18 on your writing. And that's what almost everybody's getting. You probably want about 8 vocabulary words. There's nowhere that tells us exactly how many. I wouldn't make up a poem. I would say use a real poem. That's why this is challenging. You need to memorize a poem. But luckily we're doing one tonight. Si supiera. Right? So you can read this poem again. It's free. All right, so we have our words there. And then materials, puzzles with vocabulary words, copies of the poem video. And then you want to break it down by day 1, day 2, and day 3, right? And everything relating to the objective or to teaching the vocabulary words, right? Everything is getting them ready for that objective. Day 1, the teacher will start by pre-teaching the vocabulary words. You always want to do that first, teach the vocabulary words. She will encourage students to participate and share if they already know some of these words. As they go over the words, she will point out some are using the conditional and future tenses. You don't have to write that, but it shows that you have really good knowledge of what you're doing. Next, she will show a video about the author, Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Next, she will ask volunteers to read one stanza of the poem. They will have a class discussion about what they understood. So notice I'm already doing the objective. They're reading it and having a discussion. They're discussing what they understood. Next, in partners, they will analyze each stanza about what they understood. Okay. Day 2, the teacher will review the vocabulary words again. Students will have puzzle pieces with the vocabulary words on some pieces and a definition in Spanish on the other pieces. They will put the puzzles together. This is great for kinesthetic learners, right? They're going to get to use their hands and move things around, manipulate things. Native and heritage speakers and advanced students will have some more challenging vocabulary words, and struggling students will have a glossary. After the vocabulary puzzle, students will work with a partner to look for new insight about the poem. Again, we're hitting the objective, right? So we're doing different learning styles. We're doing what's called differentiated instruction. That's meeting the needs of all learners, right? Day 3, students will write a reflection about their poem, and then they will discuss the reflection with a partner. So again, we're hitting the objective. Assessment. For a formal assessment, the teacher will circulate and listen to each pair discuss their reflection. That's related to the objective. For an informal assessment, the teacher will check if they completed the vocabulary puzzle. So that's a low stress, right? So informal is low stress. So that's a good lesson plan. Please remind me tonight, if I don't remember on my own, to send you guys this lesson plan. So I will do that. But let's keep going because we have a lot to cover. So you can see there's a lot of practice in my course for listening, lots of listening practice, right? Lots of reading practice, and then writing and speaking. So it's got everything. The only thing it doesn't have a ton of is the cultural understanding, because almost everybody gets about 10 out of 12 right on that. So I don't spend time teaching you stuff that you already know or that is not going to improve your score. So I'm really big on giving you what's going to get you the best results in the least amount of time, right? Because everybody is busy or has other things to do besides get ready for these tests, right? So let me find the one I want to do tonight. I handpicked some. You can see there's lots of them. Okay. So the way this works for listening is you hear it once, then you preview the questions, then you hear it again, then you answer the questions. So the first time, you don't really know what you're supposed to be listening for. So you want to be taking notes, but you don't really know what to take notes about. Just anything that you can write down, right? But then you preview the questions. So the second time you listen, you're writing down the answer to those questions. So once you preview the questions, you might write down some keywords from it, what the keywords from the questions are. That way, whenever you listen the second time, you can write down what your answers are going to be and be able to answer those. So let me share my sound. Okay.
Las mariquitas. Las mariquitas tienen la reputación de ser los insectos más beneficiosos en el mundo de la agricultura. Es cierto que son muy buenos para minimizar las invasiones de insectos que causan daño a las cosechas. Sin embargo, también hay casos en los que las mariquitas causan problemas si alguien los sitúa fuera de su lugar nativo. Estos insectos son depredadores y se alimentan de áfidos, ácaros y hongos, los cuales causan daños a muchas plantas y cultivos. Esta parte de la cadena alimenticia ayuda mucho a los granjeros. Además, si las presas escasean, luego las mariquitas se alimentan de larvas y otros insectos. En el siglo XIX, los Estados Unidos introdujeron una mariquita nativa de Australia para controlar una plaga, la escama algodonosa, que afectaba a algunos cítricos y fue un éxito. Sin embargo, a veces introducir una nueva especie causa daños. Por ejemplo, para controlar las plagas, las mariquitas asiáticas fueron introducidas en muchos lugares. Estas mariquitas ahora son una plaga en sí misma, porque han desplazado a las mariquitas nativas y a veces se alimentan de los cultivos que se busca proteger. Las mariquitas proveen muchos beneficios para la agricultura, pero es necesario respetar el ecosistema natural y evitar la introducción de especies que puedan causar daños a las plantas nativas.
All right, so now we get to preview the questions. On the real test, they just show you the question, not the answer choices. So I'm only going to give you 40 seconds to preview the questions because that's all you get. So let me set a timer. All right, so now we get to hear it again. So you can see it was kind of quick to preview those questions, right? You don't really have time to read everything. You just write down some keywords. Oh, so I should show you. Let me see if it lets me go back. So here you would want to write down maybe reputación, and then you're listening for the reputation they have. For 10, introdujeron, and you're listening for why they introduced them, right? For 11, ¿qué comen? 12, ¿qué tipo de daño, right? There's synonyms, vaquitas, mariquitas. It's regional. Yeah, it'll just be 10 seconds per question. So it depends on how many questions are there, but it's 10 seconds per question. Then you hear it again. So now you know what you're listening for. So listen again, and then we'll answer the questions.
Las mariquitas. Las mariquitas tienen la reputación de ser los insectos más beneficiosos en el mundo de la agricultura. Es cierto que son muy buenos para minimizar las invasiones de insectos que causan daño a las cosechas. Sin embargo, también hay casos en los que las mariquitas causan problemas si alguien los sitúa fuera de su lugar nativo. Estos insectos son depredadores y se alimentan de áfidos, ácaros y hongos, los cuales causan daños a muchas plantas y cultivos. Esta parte de la cadena alimenticia ayuda mucho a los granjeros. Además, si las presas escasean, luego las mariquitas se alimentan de larvas y otros insectos. En el siglo XIX, los Estados Unidos introdujeron una mariquita nativa de Australia para controlar una plaga, la escama algodonosa, que afectaba a algunos cítricos y fue un éxito. Sin embargo, a veces introducir una nueva especie causa daños. Por ejemplo, para controlar las plagas, las mariquitas asiáticas fueron introducidas en muchos lugares. Estas mariquitas ahora son una plaga en sí misma, porque han desplazado a las mariquitas nativas y a veces se alimentan de los cultivos que se busca proteger. Las mariquitas proveen muchos beneficios para la agricultura, pero es necesario respetar el ecosistema natural y evitar la introducción de especies que puedan causar daños a las plantas nativas.
All right, so now we'll answer the questions. It'll only be 20 seconds. So let me make this a little bit smaller so you can see the whole thing. Let me set a timer for 20 seconds. You might not even need 20 seconds, but we'll see. All right, that's 20 seconds. Anybody have an answer? This lady's accent might be a little hard to understand. So B is tempting, but there's a better answer. There's one that's more complete. Good. Una buena reputación porque depredan a otros insectos. So yeah, it's a little bit more complete. All right, so now let's see if we can do this one in 20 seconds. Let me set the timer. On the real test, you'll have a little timer that will show you. All right, that's 20 seconds. Let's see what you guys think about that one. Una plaga. Good job. To control a plague, right? ¿Qué comen las vaquitas? 20 seconds. So let me show you guys what happens if I pick A. You have to select all that apply, right? So yeah, it's A and C, hongos and ácaros. Good. I think there's still one more question on this one. What are across? I don't know what, I don't think I understand across. Oh, ácaros, aphids. It's a type of bug. Aphids. All right, and now the last one. B and D. Good, so that time we got that right. So see how a little practice, you're already improving, right? You're noticing the attention to detail that you have to have. So that's great. So let me see what we're doing next. Listening. So this was Adriana. And she passed. She did my course. She didn't want to do the group tutoring. It's not for everybody, but she did my course and she worked really hard and she did one private session with me to make sure she passed. And then I'll show you a more recent one because that one's from a few months ago. This is Austin, and he only sent me his printout from his TEA site, so it's not his actual report. But you can see he got a 247, and he did really well. And he would have done even better, but some things happened for him that affected his score because his Spanish is awesome. So he should have had an even higher score than that. But that's a good score. And then let's see what's next. So we talked about that. Now for reading, everybody I work with, like I said, already speaks Spanish well, right? And they just have to polish a few things. But sometimes in reading, they don't do well. They get like 16 or 18 out of 25 because we don't always have that cognitive language that we need in Spanish, that advanced Spanish. So I work with you on reading more challenging passages than maybe you're used to, right? So tonight we'll read something by José Martí, who's a famous poet. And this is Versos Sencillos. It's kind of short. Would anybody like to read it? Okay, go ahead, Dalila. Thank you.
Versos sencillos de José Martín. Yo sé de Egipto y Niágara, ni Grecia, y de Persia y Xenofónete. Y prefiero la caricia del aire fresco del monte. Yo sé de las historias viejas del hombre y de sus sencillas, y prefiero las abejas volando en las campanillas. Yo sé del canto del viento en las ramas vocingleras. Nadie me diga que miento, que lo prefiero de versa. Yo sé de un gamo aterrado que vuelve al redil y expira, de un corazón cansado que muere oscuro y sin ira.
Thank you. So now let's go to the quiz. So I can open it in a different window and that way we can flip back and forth, right? That way we can see. So if you're in my course in tutoring, you can always do that. Have two tabs open. All right. ¿Qué quiere decir el autor cuando dice yo sé de Egipto y de Grecia? Quiere decir que conoce países y ciudades desarrollados. That's right. So here you have to kind of read into what he's saying, right? He's not telling you that, but if we think about our geography knowledge, we might be able to piece that together. ¿Qué significa la frase prefiere la caricia del aire fresco? So let's go back to the text. Yo sé de Egipto y de Grecia, y de Persia y Xenofonte, y prefiero la caricia del aire fresco del monte. Que a él no le gusta la contaminación del aire en las ciudades, que le gusta el cariño que siente en el campo, que prefiere la comida natural, que prefiere vivir en el campo en lugar de vivir en una ciudad. Good, Jessica got that one. He wants to live out in the country, right? ¿Cuál palabra tiene el significado más semejante a la palabra rencillas? Orgullo, rencor, salud, dinero. So let's go back. If we don't know this word, we need to go back to the text. Yo sé de las historias viejas, del hombre y de sus rencillas, y prefiero las abejas volando en las campanillas. Good. So this one is B. If we could also use process of elimination, right? That the other ones don't really make sense here. ¿Cuál palabra describe el tono de los dos primeros párrafos? Alegría, orgullo, nostalgia, rencilla. Yo sé de Egipto y de Grecia, y de Persia y Xenofonte, y prefiero la caricia del aire fresco del monte. Yo sé de las historias viejas del hombre y de sus rencillas, y prefiero las abejas volando en las campanillas. Alegría, orgullo, nostalgia, rencilla. Yeah, the test you'll be able to, it'll all be like on the same screen. You can scroll up and down. Good, nostalgia. So you guys did pretty well on that. Most people were getting that right. And there's a lot more practice in my course. And what I do is on many of them, there's cultural aspects tied in, right? Like what they do on the test, tying in the culture. So now let's talk about the written expression. For the written expression, there's 3 of them that you have to do. And I don't think anybody else does this quite like I do. So in my course, first I show you an example of how to get a perfect score, and then you upload your own to get feedback from me, right? So, and people are really turning in their assignments lately. I've gotten so busy that I had to hire somebody to help me do the grading. So some of the grading is done by Austin, who did very well on the LOTE and is giving people excellent feedback, right? So, so we'll look at an example, and then if you're in my course in tutoring, if you haven't uploaded your assignments yet, be sure to do that. And you'll notice first I teach accent marks. So tonight we don't have time to do that. We don't have time to do everything, but I teach you that first. And the integrated writing, that one takes a while because you have to read an article that goes with it. So instead of doing that, let's look at the email. So for the email, you need to fully address it. That sounds silly, but a lot of people don't do that, right? You probably want to use usted when you're writing. Le, usted, right? Use the formal tone, probably, unless they tell you you're writing to a family member or a close friend, but it's probably not going to be that. Open it up with estimado or estimada, and then close it with atentamente. Be careful with your time. You only get 50 minutes to answer all three responses, right? So the email, the position essay, and the integrated writing. And the integrated writing will probably take you a little while because it goes with an article you have to read. All right, so this situation, they give you this. Imagine que usted va a mudarse a otra ciudad. Una agencia de alquileres le mandó el siguiente correo electrónico. Escriba su respuesta teniendo en cuenta la información que se le solicita. And then they give you this. Asunto, un apartamento para alquilar de Estado Real 4. Fecha 9 de diciembre 2013. Para Diego Villalobos, estimado cliente. They give you this too. This is the email that they write to you. Gracias por su correo electrónico. Le podemos decir que somos una de las principales agencias de alquiler de la ciudad. Nuestro equipo le puede ayudar a alquilar un apartamento a buen precio en la zona que usted desee. ¿Podría, por favor, decirnos las características del apartamento que busca? ¿Cuál es el alquiler máximo que puede pagar? ¿Y para cuándo tiene pensado realizar su traslado? También necesitamos saber cuándo estaría disponible para concertar una cita. Esperamos su respuesta y les saludo atentamente, Courtney Schoenfeld, de Estado Real 4. So before we plan our response, we want to look back and see, what did they ask us? They asked several things. The characteristics of the apartment we want, the maximum rent, when I plan to move, when I'm available, and they kind of indirectly asked about where I want to live, right? In the zone that you want. Right. The most common mistakes people make is getting off topic or not using accent marks. Those are the two most common mistakes. So now I need to rewrite all of these things right here. Asunto, un apartamento para alquilar. De Diego Villalobos, fecha 9 de diciembre para señora Schoenfeld. And I open it up, estimada señora Schoenfeld. Something cordial to open it up using the usted form. Not te agradezco, but le agradezco su ayuda. Busco un apartamento pequeño con un dormitorio, un baño, una sala, un comedor y una cocina. El apartamento debe tener aire acondicionado y un lavaplatos. También prefiero que haya una piscina en el área. Lo máximo que puedo pagar es $1,000 al mes. Necesito vivir cerca de la plaza. Voy a mudarme el 4 de enero y me gustaría encontrar algo tan pronto como sea posible. Puedo quedarme en un hotel por unos días mientras buscamos el apartamento perfecto. Estaré disponible para concertar una cita el 5 o 6 de enero. Atentamente, Diego Villalobos. Yeah, you do need to write all of that stuff, just like I did. You want to write all of
I
these
just
things.
have a question.
Are these what?
I have a question.
Sure.
When you say el apartamento,
Yeah.
es no el departamento?
In the Texas NESINC manual, they use the word apartamento.
Okay.
Yeah. Because this comes straight from them. So this is the official word that they would use. But yeah, there's regional variations for sure. And so then in my course, I would give you another email situation and then ask you to respond and upload it, right? And you do that for every writing task. And almost everybody, even Ricardo that I just showed you that he passed the test, he's a published author from Mexico City. His Spanish is better than my Spanish, but he kept failing the LOTE over and over again. Why? Because sometimes he was getting off topic, right? And once in a while he'd miss an accent mark too. But his vocabulary was excellent. But he would get a little off topic, he'd miss an accent mark, they would count off, right? So I worked with him, not so much on accent marks because it was very rare that he'd miss one, but I had to really work with him on staying on topic, addressing the objective. And once we did that, he passed, right? Yeah, you do need to
Courtney,
kind of get to the point. Yeah, you do, because you only
¿cómo,
have limited words.
Courtney, cómo se va fuera de on topic a la hora de responder? Porque uno
Well,
escribe mucho.
yeah, if for the email, it's less likely to get off topic,
Sure.
right?
Ajá.
But for the essay and the integrated writing, what he was doing mostly on the integrated writing, it always says basándose en lo que ha leído. And he would write it based off of his knowledge because he's a very well-read, very smart man, right? So he'd give a lot of information that he knows, not so much information off of what he read. So on the email, people mostly stay on topic, but what they do is they leave something out. That's more common. They'll forget to answer a question. They might forget to say how much rent they can pay, or might forget to
Okay.
say when they're available.
En el essay, entonces en el essay, cuando ellos hacen la pregunta, aparte del material que leemos, sí he hecho eso yo de, o se me olvidó lo que leí en el momento, entonces pongo lo que yo conozco acerca del tema. Creo que ese ha sido mi problema.
Yeah. On integrated writing, it's always based off of what you read, not what you know. And then you can
Entonces
see
prácticamente parafraseamos la información.
on the integrated writing, it'll say basándose en lo que ha leído.
Ajá. Okay.
Yeah. And then Jacqueline, she used my course to pass the LOTE, and then she's such a hard charger, she turned right around and took the PPR and used my course for that and passed that too. So she was real excited. So that was exciting. Yeah, if you're getting a 4, you're probably missing accent marks. You're on topic, but you're missing accent marks, even if you think you're not. Like Ricardo is a published author in Mexico City. I still caught a couple of mistakes on him, right? So my Spanish isn't perfect. You've heard me speak Spanish tonight. It's not perfect, but on accent marks, I'd say I get well over 99% of accent marks right. I never miss accent marks. I miss other stuff, but it's not going to be an accent mark. So I can help you get better at that. So now to the fun part. This is the part that's going to make you a little bit nervous, probably. All right. And it's the speaking. And why does it make you nervous? Well, because you're in a room with other people, right? And you have to talk and be recorded and graded. So I'm hoping tonight one of you will be willing to practice, right? And we can practice. So let's look at the speaking. It's 12%. You have to do 3 tasks. One is a presentational speaking activity on the same article that you read that we just talked about for the writing, right? So we won't do that one tonight because we'd have to read this long article. Express an opinion or make an oral presentation and a simulated conversation. So we'll do express an opinion or make an oral presentation, and because I want you to see how it's a little bit challenging. So we'll do the one in my course. Right here. For this assignment, you will be given a situation and asked to give your opinion or propose a solution. You will have 15 seconds to review the directions and the situation presented on screen. You will then hear the topic for the task and have 2 minutes to prepare your response. When the preparation time is complete, you will be prompted to begin speaking. You will have 2 minutes to complete your response in the target language. So you get 15 seconds to read the directions, 2 minutes to take notes, right? Your notes are not graded. And then 2 minutes to record, and there's no chances to replay or re-record or anything like that. It's just all real quick. You have to just be ready. They record you for 2 minutes. What I noticed consistently from, I've done this for so many years, is right at the 1 minute mark or 1 minute 20 seconds, people run out of things to say. It's hard to talk for 2 whole minutes, even if Spanish is your first language, right? So we'll see how people do tonight. So I'm going to play this file. And then I'll give you 2 minutes to take notes. So let me set my timer for 2 minutes so it'll be ready. And then we'll have 2 minutes for somebody to speak. You know what I'll do is I'll put a 2 minute timer up here. That way you can see the countdown, just like you do. I try to make it like the real test. Okay, so let me go back here.
Algunas personas piensan que las escuelas virtuales o las escuelas que ofrecen clases por internet son mejores para los estudiantes en la escuela secundaria. Otras personas opinan que es mejor que los estudiantes asistan a una escuela tradicional o una escuela con un salón de clase físico para la escuela secundaria. Explique y defienda su opinión sobre este tema.
Now, 2 minutes to take notes. Okay, so now we need a 2-minute timer for somebody to practice. So who feels like doing that?
I can practice.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, let's hear it.
Yo opino que los estudiantes deben de ir a las escuelas virtuales, a las escuelas en persona en vez de las escuelas virtuales cuando están en la secundaria. Somos los humanos seres son personas, son una especie que nos gusta estar con otra gente, somos sociales. Por eso, si vamos al colegio para aprender, nos va a dar más ánimo a estar en la clase y más nos puede ayudar a entender la información si hay alguien al lado tuyo en vez de si estás en una computadora. También te da te da cosas para hacer en el día y te da una vida más activa. Las vidas más activas son mejores para la gente. Ayuda en el aprendizaje también cuando estamos cambiando de clases. Cuando tenemos movimiento con el aprendizaje, nos ayuda a aprender el contenido que está enfrente de nosotros. Por eso, creo que ir al colegio, en vez de en vez de asistir las clases virtuales, es mejor. La última razón es que podemos relacionarnos más con las profesoras y profesores. Cuando conocemos nuestras maestras, tenemos más confianza, pedir ayuda y nos puede ayudar en el aprendizaje más.
Wow, 2 minutes. That's great. That's excellent. So there were a couple things I noticed. At first, you seemed like you're nervous and stumbled a little bit, but you really got better. You got better.
At first, yeah.
Yeah, you got better though. You got a lot better, and you had a stronger command of the language. It seemed like something came on, and you got better. You would say seres humanos. and then you self-corrected, but I want to draw attention to it, not to make you embarrassed at all, but because so many people do this. They say atender when they need to say asistir, but you corrected, so I don't think you'd lose points for that. And then when you're saying conocemos, you want to say conocemos a los profesores. So just a few little things. But you know, I'll be perfectly honest, you'd probably lose some points for the beginning part. Absolutely.
Yeah,
But
Sure, no,
still,
and I want you to be honest. I want to learn, so yeah.
it can be real life topics like this to get an idea of what's on the real, of what could be on the real life test. Look at the Texas NESINC manual or take that $10 Pearson test, and you can get ideas of what's in the realm of possible. But this kind of question could come up, right? So that, let me see what else we have left. So we did the writing, we did the speaking. Okay, we looked at Jacqueline. I think I have a few more testimonials to show you. This was Erica. Made this so big you can't see it. She did really well, 252. And I always like to see the variation because you can see that she did really well on the Spanish parts of the test. She still did well enough in pedagogy to pass, but she didn't do as well as some of the other people, right? But she worked really hard on all of her Spanish areas. And then this is Mercedes. She passed too. She didn't send me her score report, not the whole thing that you could see, just the cutout of that she passed. But yeah, this summer's been great because lots of people have been passing. And I've improved my course, and I think that's really made a difference. I've really improved my course with more listening practice, more reading practice, more of everything, really. And then my tutoring always gets better because I learn from you guys new things, right? So I think that's why scores have been really good this summer. And I forgot Carrie's is my favorite, and I forgot hers. Let me show you hers 1 second. I'm gonna pause my share because Carrie's is one of my favorites because Carrie is a third language learner. So let me show you. She barely passed with the 240, but like I said, it's her third language. And you could see the email that she sent. I passed with a 240. Phew, Spanish is my third language. My main job is as a Russian teacher, but my school wanted me to take the Spanish test, right? She worked on her Spanish for 2 years to get it better. And then she did my course and she learned all the pedagogy and did super well on pedagogy to make up for the fact that her Spanish wasn't super strong. Right? So she's still good at Spanish. I'm not taking away from her Spanish, but she's not super strong at it. So she had to do really well on pedagogy to be able to pass, right? So if you're super good at Spanish, you can get by with not being as strong on pedagogy. But if your Spanish isn't super strong, you have to do very well on that. So that's a lot of testimonials. So did you guys learn something tonight?
Yes, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And I've got a little bit of stuff to show you in case, like a lot of you guys already have my course in tutoring, and I recognize you. I'm so glad that you came to learn some more. But in case you do not have my course in tutoring yet, and you're interested, we meet on Wednesday nights. And in fact, anybody that's in my group, I did send out a text and an email, but I just want to make sure everybody knows that the time will now be 7:30 p.m. I used to meet a little bit later, but we're going to meet at 7:30 p.m. And I have different ways to help you pass. So let me see here's my flyer. Let me see if I can make this bigger. So I came up with a new option because a lot of people want to talk to me on the phone during the week, but I have real limited availability because I also have to grade and I have to get ready for tutoring and everything else. So I don't have a lot of time for phone calls, but some people really want that. So I have a new option where you can pay a little bit more and get weekly phone calls from me where you can ask me anything you want to ask me, right? You get 2 months of weekly tutoring. We meet Wednesday nights at 7:30. All of the pedagogy information, peer support, right? Meeting with people like you guys every Wednesday night. feedback on your writing, feedback on your speaking, reading, listening, practice, 3 extra pedagogy tests. So it's all of the pedagogy tests I have, plus the 2 that are included. 6 lesson plans, 2 months of course access, the test anxiety course, and everything. And if you pay in full, you don't have to pay in full at once. There's a payment plan. So you're paying in full to get access, but there's a payment plan for up to 12 months to break it down to only about $39 a month, depending on which payment plan you pick. So I didn't want price to be anything to hold you back, right? All right, great, yes. And so let me put this in the chat box in case you want to check it out later. And tonight when I email you guys, I will also email this link that has everything, right? So I think that's going to be great if you want some extra support. And I find that it does happen a lot where people, they want phone calls in between. A lot of people want to call me and ask questions, right? But I am very available by email and text. If you decide to just do the course in tutoring, you'll still be able to ask me questions, but by email and text. So a lot of people really want those phone calls where they get more personal help. But let's say you're not going to need that. You could still get the 2 months of tutoring, all the other things that I mentioned, the peer support, pedagogy content, writing, speaking, listening, reading, only 1 extra pedagogy test, only 3 lesson plans, still 2 months of the course, and the text anxiety course. And that's only about $31 a month if you choose the 12-month payment option. You can choose different payment options. It doesn't have to be 12 months. You only get 2 months of tutoring, so you might want to pay it off in less time, right? So you're not paying for so long. That's all up to you. Lots of different payment options if you choose Affirm or Afterpay. And then if you're real self-directed, like let's say you don't really want tutoring, you don't like, some people tell me I don't want to meet in a group, right? Yes, thank you for reminding me about the lesson plan. I don't want to meet in a group. So then they just do the course on their own. They still learn the pedagogy, get feedback on their assignments because you upload them, right? And still get your reading and listening practice, 2 lesson plans, 2 months of course access. And that's the most affordable option. So that's that. So let me show you. And like I said, it's a great group. We meet every Wednesday. So you're never more than a week away from getting help. And here's the lesson plan. And tons of people, like I said, have passed this summer. So I know it's an investment, right? And why do I have to charge that much, you might be wondering? Well, because I have to pay thousands of dollars to use my course platform, right? Tons of money. So, and plus I'm always making improvements and I'm hiring people to do things. So instead of looking at it as a cost, what I encourage you to do, because I have to invest money in my business, right? I always look at it as an investment. What am I going to get in return for this, that money that I'm putting into this? Well, if you're going to get a job that's going to pay you $60,000 for your whole career, plus you pay into TRS and you get your retirement. It seems like a no-brainer to put in a little bit of money up front, right? Knowing that what you're going to get down the road. And the good thing about being a Spanish teacher is you guys only have to take 2 tests, whereas like the bilingual teachers, they have to take 5 tests. So your test is harder, right? But at least it's only 1 content test and then 1 PPR. That's it. They take 5. So that gets super expensive. And they're not really making much more money than you. They might get a little stipend, but they're not making that much more money. So you're saving on that at least. And you'll be very marketable. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything?
Ms. Corney, I would like to talk with you by the end of the class.
Sure, sure.
Okay.
And if it's better to talk on the phone, we can talk on the phone too. If people don't log off right away.
Okay, so it's gonna be only like for a minute. That's it.
Sure.
Cool.
All right. Any other questions or comments? I'm super excited to help you in your journey. And so happy to see familiar faces again. All right. Well, I'll let you guys log off and I'll stick around for Pedro. Let me see. Yes, I will send the information on an email update too. And I'll repost it here in case somebody is wanting to, oh, and I forgot to tell you something important. If you enroll tonight, I'll send you the recording for my pedagogy crash course, which is usually sold separately. And I don't usually do that. Yes, to join the tutoring, you just click on this, everything's hyperlinked. You choose whichever option you want. If you want the ultimate bundle, the regular bundle, or the do-it-yourself, they're all hyperlinked there, right? And then you can enroll tonight, and I'll send you the pedagogy crash course, which is a 2-hour recording of everything you need to know for pedagogy. And I'm not offering that class very often anymore. I used to offer it every month or two, but my time is getting more and more limited. So I'm just trying to beef up my regular tutoring, and I don't have time for a lot of the extra stuff anymore, unfortunately. But I do have the recordings. So if you enroll tonight, I'll send you that recording. That's usually a separate charge. And that'll be a great way to pass. But yeah, so hopefully I'll see some more people on Wednesday night, or just joining the course if you don't want to do the Wednesday night. And if you know anybody also, if you recommend somebody, please tell me who you recommended, because I'll give you my PPR course for free if they enroll, if they buy something, right? Which is also a $79 value. So please let me know, because I want to know who's recommending people, and then give you a little something to thank you. That's the least I can do, because I really, I have a lot of expenses, but one of them is not advertising, because you guys are so gracious and so helpful that y'all recommend me, and I don't have to spend a lot of money on advertising. So that's really good. But I will let you guys go. And Pedro, I think we can make a breakout room, maybe. Let me see, while people, I don't know. I don't see that.
Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you, guys. Let me stop the recording too.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, guys.